Yeah, I've never thought about that aspect. And community care, even in dense populations, like for instance, in the DC area, it took me just over 2 months to get this appointment, and I absolutely rate community care. Now, I didn't go with it because it's not a time sensitive thing, but I could have if I wanted to. But even in dense populations, community care is absolutely amazing. So my VA is in DC. It's about 20 minutes away from me. Now, if you've ever been in DC, there's a thing called traffic and other people. So that 20-minute drive is actually about an hour. I'm not joking. It's going to take me 1 hour to get from my house to go about 11 miles through DC. It's going to suck, and it's snowing right now. There's snow and ice on the road, so probably an hour and a half. And yeah, this appointment's going to be miserable. Then I got to come back. And I'm in a densely populated area. Think of someone who lives in Eastern Kentucky or like Arkansas, who's an hour and a half away from the nearest Walmart, right? I guarantee you there's no VA facility there. And to understand that the VA is trying to put other barriers in place to prevent veterans to use community care, which by the way is what led to the Complete the Mission Act. It's essentially the HVAC was like, hey, we're done with this. We're going to pass this. You guys are done. Don't do that at all. For those in rural communities, community care is critical, right? I would call it critical community care, because you can't expect a Vietnam era, veteran with diabetes and hypertension who probably drives a Ford pickup and that's a 30 years plus old, 2 hours one way to go get a healthcare appointment. It's just insane. And so yes, community care is absolutely critical. And I would argue that, I know this is probably not going to be, we're definitely going to get hate comments on this one, but I would argue that privatizing the VHA, not completely, but definitely doubling down on community care is the right move for many reasons, not just budget concerns. But if we're prioritizing veteran healthcare, that's reason number one. And I think all the other reasons to keep VHA, you would actually see the priority of veterans kind of shifts, and you're looking at like pensions and jobs. And we hired, the VA secretary always says, we have the best neurologist in America, and he wants to be here. The reason he's saying that is because he can make money somewhere else. And so now the VA does have a hard time keeping physicians, and I don't want, someone who passes med school with the lowest grade, they still call them doctor. I don't want that person to be my doctor, right? We don't need the best care, but give me someone who understands what's going on. That's my 2 cents on VHA and budget stuff. Unless you have any last thoughts on that one. All right, so let's go ahead and transition to, Jason's got to be really sick right now. I can just see it. Let's go transition to the VBA. And that's probably what most people care about, at least on this channel, is looking at VBA. And I'm going to say something that's a little controversial here. I kind of want your thoughts. Everyone always brings up how Republicans voted no on the PACT Act. That's like the number one comment I see anytime I talk about the PACT Act, okay? And it's true. Many Republicans voted no, and it was mainly related to budget concerns. And so with every piece of legislation, there's pros and cons. I don't care what it is. There's pros and cons to everything. So PACT Act was great, and that's objective. More veterans have more benefits and more care than ever before. That's a fact. And it's largely due to the PACT Act. However, the PACT Act created this vacuum of VBA staff, this vacuum of VHA staff, this vacuum of claims and backlog, healthcare claims and backlog, travel claims and backlog. And that's solely related to the PACT Act. And I think as of, I want to say March of last year, so almost a year ago, there were 1.3 million claims that were approved. That doesn't even include the denials. And so from the PACT Act about a year ago, I would probably say 2 million claims from the PACT Act now, and that's me guessing. That creates a huge vacuum in the VBA staff. And I'm going to add to that, but I want your thoughts on that, Jason, about the PACT Act. It is good, and I want to state that again. PACT Act is good. The PACT Act also comes with some hit shots as well.
Right. You know, here's the funny thing about Congress, right? And who votes for things and who doesn't. Sometimes it's posturing. Sometimes it's like, we know it's going to pass anyway. And so you'll have, whatever side, not signing up or voting for something.
Yeah.
Or it's one little piece inside there that they're just digging their heels in on, right? It's, I'm not going to sign, I'm not going to vote for this because of the 1X provision inside here. I know it's going to pass anyway, so now I can stand on my hill about how important this one little piece is, whatever. So at the end of the day, the PACT Act was a good piece of legislation. Do I think, okay, look, it added presumptives. Cool. So yes, that's great. Did it really change the world for veterans in a general sense? Not really. But it did change presumptives, or it did add presumptives, and that is the important piece. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so it's really not about creating more. It's so hard for me to articulate this because the way that you see it written is sometimes different than the reality of it. The reality is that it created presumptive list for burn pits, and it added in one thing, I think, or two things. It added two things for Agent Orange for presumptives. And that's great. And I'm glad, because presumptives for those individuals, essentially what you're looking at for these groups is those that had served in combat zones, wherever, right? Whether it was Agent Orange or burn pit stuff for the Middle East. And so it makes an easier road for them with a presumptive list. Now, what I don't like is the idea that you have to have a condition that's on that list in order to file a claim. And I think sometimes the lines get blurred when this information gets pushed out. And it's like, these are the only conditions you can file for, but here they are now. No, that's just presumptives. You could file for anything. It doesn't matter. You just need to build the bridge and, back and create the nexus and so forth. Now, the hidden piece in this, I think, that is advantageous for the VA and by default the veteran community is the PACT Act allowed the VA to essentially cut a lot of the bureaucratic red tape in determining presumptive conditions. They used to have to go outside and get the presumptives approved outside. Now they can do it all internally. So we're seeing that with the forever chemicals, with the kidney cancer. They will be creating a presumptive list for that, or with that one condition at this point. But the reality is that without the PACT Act, the VA would be handcuffed and have to wait for that to get determined somewhere else. So they've given the ability to the VA to create these presumptives lists, and I think that part's very important. The thing that I don't want people to get hamstrung on is that you have to have a condition on that list to file for a claim. No, you just need to have a condition on that list for a presumptive claim, which eliminates the need for a nexus, but you could file for anything, and you should, if you believe that it's due or caused by your time in service. The other piece of the PACT Act, Clay, that some people, I know and probably a lot of our viewers do, is that it opened up the doorway to healthcare for approximately 1 million or more veterans. You just opened up the and which is fine. I'm all about that. Don't think I am against that. But the reality is that there used to be a pseudo gatekeeper into VA healthcare. And you had to, meet X or Y or Z, whatever. There's 10 different ways that you could get into healthcare. Well, they ripped that away and said, hey, for you 1 million, you could just walk over and start getting healthcare today, which is great. And that's the way it should be. But the funny thing is that during that after that happened, Clay, the VA says, yep, we're planning to eliminate 10,000 VHA jobs, healthcare administration jobs. And you and I had this conversation, and it's just like, how can you say we're just increased by 1 million people can come into the healthcare system, but we're going to pull back, and we're already like delayed on time frames for things. It didn't make any sense. They finally reversed course and corrected that, but for a while they were going down that path, which was horrible. On the VBA side, the Veterans Benefits Administration side, remember that the VA is a three-headed monster. We mostly talk of two of the heads, not the third, but it's VHA, healthcare, VBA, benefits, and then the NCA, which is the National Cemeteries Administration. On the VBA side, there has been an overwhelming number of claims. And you and I know, Clay, that we'll call it, there's a different word for it, but we'll just call it the key performance indicators for the raters and the VA workers handling the claims. It has to do with how many you can get through, right? Let's Johnny on the spot, Janie on the spot, stamp them and keep going, right? Don't take your time. You're going to, I don't care if you did 10 right. I want 30 done. So what happens is you get people ruling and deciding claims potentially in an unsatisfactory way, right? And then it leaves you to file more appeals. It clogs up now the Benefits Administration side, or the Board of Veterans Appeals side, and then consequently could get pushed to the Court of Veterans Appeals, and then that's why we had that Supreme Court case. So anyway, I went down 7 different rabbit holes and coughed once. So back to you.